Have you ever paused to ask yourself what truly defines the essence of a human life? In a world overflowing with noise, chaos, and contradictions, one man dared to descend into the depths of the human soul like no one else ever did. That man was Fyodor Dostoevsky. Not just a novelist, but a philosopher of the human condition who embraced its most brutal and beautiful truths. Today, we won't just explore the powerful ideas behind crime and punishment, or the Brothers Karamazov. We'll uncover a forgotten insight from Dostoevsky that could radically shift how you perceive your own journey. What if these books weren't just literature, but psychological maps of the inner war you're fighting every day? Stick with me until the end of this video, because what you're about to discover might break a lie you've believed your whole life. Prepare yourself for a visceral journey through Dostoevsky's universe, where each page tears open a hidden truth, and every character becomes a mirror for your deepest questions about morality, freedom, and faith. Are you ready to break free from borrowed beliefs and face the raw paradoxes that define real growth? Moscow, 1821. In a world still ruled by empires and rigid traditions, a child was born into the tension between duty and imagination. A child who would grow into one of the most radical observers of the human soul. Fyodor Dostoevsky. Raised in a middle-class household where literature and philosophical debate weren't just hobbies but daily rituals, young Fyodor absorbed early on the deep existential questions that most people spend their whole lives avoiding. Even as he enrolled in a military engineering academy in St. Petersburg, a path chosen more by societal expectations than personal calling, Dostoevsky's heart was never in uniform. His true obsession wasn't with strategies or weapons, but with the silent wars raging inside the human psyche. He wrestled with a dilemma that many still face today. Do I follow the life I'm supposed to live, or the one that's trying to break out of me? Eventually, Dostoevsky chose the latter. He abandoned a promising career in the military to dive headfirst into the chaos of writing, not for fame, but to reclaim his voice and speak to the brokenness of the human condition. In 1846, he released his first novel, Poor Folk, and it exploded into the literary scene. Critics and readers alike felt something different in his words. Not just narrative skill, but spiritual precision. He wasn't writing to entertain, he was writing to reveal. That early success was just the beginning, but the deeper truths he would uncover weren't waiting in salons or book deals. They were waiting in shadows far darker. Because Dostoevsky's journey was about to take a brutal turn, one that would test everything he believed, and one that would lead him to the edge of death and back. In 1849, Dostoevsky's life took a terrifying and irreversible turn. Arrested for his involvement with an intellectual circle that dared to challenge the Russian autocracy, he was sentenced to death. Imagine this: you're blindfolded, standing in front of a firing squad. You hear the count, 1, 2, 3. Then suddenly, a voice interrupts the ritual, a royal pardon announced at the last possible second. For Dostoevsky, this wasn't just a political game, it was a spiritual dismemberment, a psychological execution followed by a resurrection. His sentence was reduced to 4 years in a Siberian labor camp, followed by forced military service. But what those years took from him, and what they gave back, cannot be measured in time. Gone were the salons and philosophical debates. Now, he lived among thieves, murderers, and exiled souls. In that frozen silence, stripped of identity and status, Dostoevsky encountered something that modern minds rarely face. The naked, human condition, no theory, no comfort, just pain, faith, and the raw architecture of survival. And yet, amidst the cold and chains, a transformation began. He began to see that suffering was not just punishment, it was initiation. A crucible where the false self burns away and something deeper, purer, begins to form. This is where his faith, not in doctrine but in redemption, began to crystallize. He emerged from Siberia not broken, but reborn. More than a writer, more than a man. He returned as a seer of shadows, a voice for every soul that had ever been dragged through despair but refused to surrender its dignity. From this point forward, his stories weren't just narratives. They were confessions from the other side of hell. And his characters weren't imagined. They were survivors of the same abyss he had known intimately. After surviving Siberia, Dostoevsky didn't just return to writing. He returned with a fire that burned through illusion. His novels became a battlefield of the soul, exposing the inner wars we pretend don't exist. In Notes from Underground, he gives voice to the disillusioned, the fragmented, the man who can't fit into society's polished frame. It's not just a story. It's a mirror held up to the part of you that resists being controlled. Then came Crime and Punishment, where he shattered the myth of the superior man. Raskolnikov believes he can transcend morality, that he can kill and still remain pure. But the guilt doesn't fade. It haunts. It rots from within. Through this character, Dostoevsky whispers a brutal truth. No one escapes the weight of their conscience, not even the brilliant, not even the justified. But it was in the Brothers Karamazov that Dostoevsky reached his philosophical peak. Through the collision of four brothers, the skeptic, the believer, the sensualist, and the innocent, he cracks open the tension between faith and doubt, freedom and destiny, reason and love. In Ivan's rebellion against God and Alyosha's silent faith, we witness the eternal battle playing out inside all of us. These were not just novels, they were revelations, spiritual X-rays of the modern condition, each character a symptom of a deeper fracture in our culture and in ourselves. And the genius of Dostoevsky lies in never giving easy answers. He forces you to sit in the discomfort, to watch yourself unfold. Because for Dostoevsky, fiction wasn't escape. It was confrontation. His books don't entertain you. They awaken you. They call out the lie you've made peace with and demand that you answer it. And for James, the one seeking clarity in a world of noise, that confrontation may be exactly what the soul was waiting for. Dostoevsky wasn't merely a storyteller, he was a philosopher disguised as a novelist. In every page, he wrestled with the darkest contradictions of being human. He rejected the neat systems of logic and science that promised utopia without suffering. In Notes from Underground, he mocks the idea that reason alone can lead to happiness. For him, true freedom meant the freedom to contradict yourself, to feel pain, to choose wrong, to be wildly human. In Crime and Punishment, he raised a brutal question. If some men are born to lead, do they have the right to break the rules for a greater good? Raskolnikov believed yes, but what followed wasn't liberation. It was psychological collapse. His torment became proof that moral superiority is a myth, that no intellect can cleanse a soul that's burdened by guilt. It's a warning to those who think they can outthink morality. But Dostoevsky didn't just challenge the intellect. He dared to touch the sacred. In the Brothers Karamazov, the conflict between Ivan and Alyosha is the conflict of the age, reason versus faith, doubt versus surrender. Ivan demands answers. Alyosha lives the questions. Their tension mirrors the inner split of every seeker, especially in a world where spiritual hunger is often dismissed as weakness. For Dostoevsky, God wasn't an idea. God was the silence inside pain, the spark that survives the wreckage. He didn't preach, he probed. He asked what happens when the soul is stripped of meaning, of comfort, of illusions. And in that emptiness, he found the possibility of redemption. This is what makes his work timeless. He doesn't ask you to believe, he asks you to look, to descend into your own underground, confront what you've hidden, and choose. Numb yourself, or awaken. His books are rituals of initiation, and every page is a threshold. Dostoevsky died in 1881, but what he left behind didn't decay. it detonated. His legacy didn't whisper through time. It carved itself into the minds of anyone brave enough to question existence. He wasn't just a writer of the 19th century. He was a prophet of the human soul. His work cracked open the doors that modern psychology and philosophy would later walk through. Freud saw in him the roots of our internal wars. Nietzsche called him the only psychologist from whom I had something to learn. Sartre echoed his existential tension. These aren't literary compliments. They're admissions of debt from minds who saw the truth. Dostoevsky wrote the blueprint of our inner chaos before science could name it. His characters were never just people. They were forces, archetypes, clashing ideas wrapped in flesh. Through them, Dostoevsky asked the questions that still haunt us today. What is freedom when you're conditioned by fear? What is good when even your virtues can be poisoned by ego? Is redemption even real, or just a story we tell ourselves to sleep at night? And yet, what makes his work endure isn't despair. It's depth. He didn't glamorize darkness. He honored it as part of the human journey. He knew that without touching suffering, we stay shallow, comfortable, forgettable. Dostoevsky believed the soul is forged not in certainty, but in fire. That's why his words still echo in classrooms, confessionals, therapy sessions, and silent nights when you're staring at the ceiling, trying to remember who you are. He showed us that being torn is not a weakness. It's the proof you're alive. The proof you're not sleepwalking through your one and only shot at meaning. Dostoevsky's legacy is not to give answers. It's to set fire to your questions. And in that fire, you just might glimpse a more honest version of yourself. So, here we are, at the edge of Dostoevsky's abyss. And maybe, just maybe, you're starting to see something that was always there. His characters weren't created to entertain you. They were built to challenge you, to drag your mind through doubt, through guilt, through silence, and leave you standing in front of a mirror, asking, what do I truly believe? Imagine yourself in Raskolnikov's shoes. You justify your actions with logic. You call it a necessary evil, but something inside won't stay silent. The conscience doesn't care about theories. It whispers when no one's listening. It remembers what you try to forget. And like Ivan Karamazov, maybe you've questioned everything, from love to justice to the idea of God, only to find that the real war is within. We live in an age where freedom is sold in ads and identity is shaped by algorithms. But Dostoevsky saw this coming. He warned us, if we forget how to suffer consciously, we forget how to live. In a world that numbs you, his work reawakens you, not with comfort, but with clarity. So let me ask you something. Are you truly living by your own values, or just running the program handed to you? Are you choosing your path, or avoiding your pain? Because if Dostoevsky taught us anything, it's this. Redemption begins when you stop running and start feeling again. If this journey sparked something in you, don't keep it in your head. Speak it, share it, write it down, let it become real. And if you want to keep diving deeper into the truths that most people are too afraid to face, this channel is your space, your sanctuary, your rebellion against the superficial. Join our circle of seekers. Like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. And leave a comment below. What's one belief you're finally ready to question? This isn't the end. It's the threshold. And the next chapter is yours to write.